What the heck is relevancy, and why is Heather talking about it in her backyard? Today, friends, we're going to talk about Pinterest relevancy. It's a topic that keeps coming up over and over and over again, and today we are gonna just hash it out and make it as simple to understand so you can implement your Pinterest marketing strategy as effectively as you can. So let's just dive in, shall we? What is Pinterest relevancy and why is it important? How does it work? And how can I implement it? Those are the 4 things we're gonna cover today. Pinterest relevancy, what is it? Let's start there, because the more we understand relevancy and the more we're implementing on Pinterest with this thought process of, is my pin relevant to the audience I want to see it? Are the optimizations I'm putting on it relevant to the audience I want to see it? Like, the more we ask ourselves those questions, the better we will get at relevancy. Relevancy is a mixture of things on your Pinterest profile and within your strategy. It is the website you have claimed. It is the Pinterest images that you're creating, as well as the imagery you're using on your images, the keywords that you're using, the boards that you're pinning to, your overall board and profile optimization strategy. All of this is pulling in data points for the algorithm and creating like a relevancy score for each pin that you create, each board that you create, so they can properly serve it up to your audience. Now, this helps me to segue really nicely into why is it important. It's important because Pinterest needs to know what your pin is about and why it's relevant to the audience you want it to be shown to in order to properly serve it into the algorithm to the correct people, the correct audience. Well, the more and more that we hear about relevancy on Pinterest, I started hearing about relevancy originally within my ads strategy a few years ago, but I have read the engineering blog for years, and they've talked about relevancy on the blog for years, like dating back to articles I was reading in early 2017. What does this mean and how does it work? Well, at least in their new distribution system, they just recently created a new real-time distribution system. And you might have heard this already, that Pinterest is trying to serve us and serve our content as soon as possible. I think that they developed the real-time distribution system for story pins first, and now they're using it for static content. They wanted to develop it with the new product first and then test it with the existing products. So what happens when you create a Pinterest image on the platform? Well, first you optimize it and you pin it to the platform. Pinterest then takes the signals from you, the user, and the board that you're pinning it to, and they start creating data points. That's step 1. Step 2 are taking in any annotations or content, like signals from what you just created, and they're pulling that information in as well. And then they create a document for the Pinterest image. So each Pinterest image in the algorithm is actually a document, and then they index that. And as soon as that process happens, which happens in real time, as soon as that process happens, then your pin is indexed for future delivery in the algorithm. So there were a couple problems that came up when they wanted to start serving fresh content. And how do we know that they're only serving fresh content these days, or primarily fresh content? Well, they told us. Let me read it to you. I wrote it down, but I'm gonna link the article down below. As an index consisting of primarily fresh pins, we faced a cold start problem. This is where the 2 problems came in when they created this new distribution and indexing system. 1 was timeliness of distribution. Used to, when we would create fresh pins, which they started telling us to do back in 2018, it would take 24 or more hours to actually see any action on those pins. Now, when we are seeing those pins populated on the platform, within a few hours, we're actually starting to see impressions, saves, and clicks. Problem number 2 was relevancy. as it relates to distribution. So it was relevance of audience and how critical it was to the distribution of the Pinterest image. At one time, the way that the distribution seemed to work is it would just distribute pins based on the interests that other users had and how they interacted with your content. Now that is still very relevant today in how they're distributing our content, but it's also very, very relevance focused from what I'm understanding. So those were the two problems, timeliness and relevance. Now, with those two problems, they created this new distribution system. How does it work? First, it works with the board user combo. As soon as you publish your pin, it is then like parsed out and read, and they figure out based on the user who's pinning it and the board it's being pinned to, that signals the algorithm where it needs to go next, which is content annotations, basically. So what about that piece of content is important? What other interests may be at play here? For example, if it's a pin about chicken noodle soup, then other interests for the pinner, if that pin surfaces, could also be stews or grilled chicken, right? Because those are similar interests, but not exactly the same. Then they build the document and then it's indexed. Now after that, we have retrieval and almost like they call it a budget that they give the pin to actually spend in the algorithm, I guess. It's not actually promoted, so this is for all organic pins as well. Retrieval then happens after your pin is indexed. Interests happen, right? So all the interests are kind of parsed together and matched, and then they have like negative interests too. So if we're looking at chicken noodle soup, we're not gonna serve up national park or travel pins, so that wouldn't make sense. They also take into consideration content that user has recently engaged with for distribution of pins that are chosen within a query. So if the user has recently engaged with grilled chicken recipes and they go to the platform and they search for chicken noodle soup, then they possibly could be served up pins related to grilling and chicken as well, but it's not as likely. So they're taking into consideration all of the content that someone has recently engaged with, as well as other interests that they have on their profile. All of us have like a profile built inside of Pinterest based on our interests. You and I, we have different smart feeds. You and your sister will have a different smart feed. We're all very individual in that way. And then based on the rank of the pin and how it's indexed and how it's categorized and the performance or the budget of the pin, then they pull together all of the different pins that they're going to serve in that search query and they deliver it. And I'm about to tell you exactly how you're going to implement this on your own profile. And I've talked about it before. It's really as simple as just a few things. Thing number one, making sure that your profile is well optimized and on target for the audience that you want served to. If you are wanting served to people who are looking for business tips, you should not have food-related boards on your public profile. Those need to be reserved for secret or a personal profile only, not your business profile. It's very, very important that you are on target and connecting exactly with the audience that you want based on the content you're creating. If I'm looking for Pinterest for business tips, I am not likely to be looking for food-related tips on that person's profile. It doesn't connect. So your pin and board optimization is critical. That means when you create a Pinterest image today, your board title, your board description, your pin title, and your pin description, and I talked about this in how to write Pinterest descriptions video, I can link it again. And I also talk about this in how to optimize and use keywords in your profile. I can also link that as well. All of those components are critical when you create a Pinterest image and you put it on the platform. It has to be very relevant to the audience that you're using, and the keywords you're using need to also be really relevant to the pin, because they're taking into consideration all the possible interests someone would be interested in when delivering a pin in the feed. And then as soon as they engage with your content, all of that information resets and all of that work happens again. So if they engage with it, click on it, comment on it, send it to a friend, pin it to their boards, all those engagement metrics immediately trigger additional indexing to occur. Every single time something happens with your Pinterest image, it's a good or bad thing. If someone reports your image, that's not good. But if someone clicks on it, saves it, and clicks through to your website, those are all signals to the algorithm that this Pinterest image was very relevant for them and the search query that they inputted to find it. And then ultimately, that goes into the indexing of your pin and making it even more information saturated in the algorithm. It beefs up the document that they originally create when you created your Pinterest image. All of this relevancy conversation really just comes back to ensuring that your Pinterest image is highly relevant and you are using highly relevant keywords with that image, that you're using stock imagery or imagery that you take that is directly related to the thing that you're talking about, and that the board you pin it to is equally optimized and equally relevant to the pin. So let's have an example, and then I will send you on your way to chew on this for a little bit, because you're going to want to audit your Pinterest profile from here and actually go and do some optimizations to make sure that you continue to be relevant in the platform and that your pins continually get budget to be spent in the algorithm and they continue to rank higher. So a really good example of this is food. I'm a part-time vegan. So when I'm looking for vegan recipes, if I see meat or non-vegan recipes in my search results, then I'm not likely going to click on it. So here's my example. If I am looking for a vegan pizza recipe and recipes keep coming up for non-vegan or carnivore pizza recipes, I am not going to click on it, and then that's going to tell the algorithm that those pins are not relevant for me. It's gonna get impressions, but I'm gonna keep on scrolling. Scroll, scroll, scroll. It's like a billboard on a highway, like a car zooming 70 miles an hour down the highway. Think about that from your pinner's perspective, scrolling through. That's why your pin being relevant is so crucial, because they're going so fast. Back to our vegan pizza recipe. Pizza recipe, my pin that I create needs to have a pin title, a pin description, and possibly a text overlay that are all vegan pizza recipe related. And then I need to make sure that I pin it to my vegan pizza recipe board or my vegan dinners board, because those two things are really relevant to each other. They make sense. But now if I get a little off target here and I accidentally pin that the first time to my vegan dessert board and it's a dinner recipe, that's not as relevant, but it's probably not gonna hurt you as bad in the algorithm either. However, I'm not saying to pin to your non-relevant boards. I am saying that you need to make sure you are pinning to your most relevant board first. I was recently in a clubhouse and a food blogger was saying, hey, I pin to my blog board first and it's my highest performing board in my Pinterest analytics. Is that hurting my relevancy score? Short answer, yes. Because your blog board is a catch-all for all the things that you talk about on your website or all the services that you provide to your clients. However, your very vertical, niched down board for vegan pizza recipes is not the same as vegan cookies, vegan coffee, all of those other things that somebody who's looking for vegan recipes could be interested in, but they're not exactly looking for that because they searched vegan pizza recipes. They're not searching for Heather's food blog. They're searching for vegan pizza recipes. So the relevancy here and how you create your pins and where you pin them to the very first time is vital, critical. 2 different words used in the engineering blog post that I read, which is why I'm creating this video, because we've been having these conversations on Clubhouse lately. My co-founder in the Profitable Pinterest Club, Jana from Jana O Media, we have been talking about this quite a lot because Pinterest is telling us that this is important. As we navigate these waters of what relevancy means for you, how can you ensure that you're putting your content on the platform correctly? There are so many different surfaces that this is all coming into. It's coming into the home feed, it's coming into related pins, ads, shopping, and the creator marketplace is what Pinterest calls it, which is our side, basically, of the platform. So this is coming into play in all the different areas of Pinterest, and it's going to be more vital as Pinterest has put more of a focus on fresh pins and new content. It's going to be so vital that you continue to focus on those important, relevant boards as the first line of contact for every Pinterest image you create. Now, this all circles back to quality versus quantity. So if you're asking me in the comments, how many pins should I be creating? I'm going to rebut you with how many pins can you create effectively and in a quality manner. So make sure you're always focusing on that relevancy score first, and then you focus on everything else last. That's it for today's video. I will see you in the next video right here. If you're interested in more Pinterest marketing content that's not quite as nerdy and thought-provoking as this one, head on over to the Pinterest marketing playlist and consume all that your heart desires. And I'll see you next time.